This is Real Learning with Real People. These conversations are with real people. They're unscripted and they're designed to pull tidbits of information from people who are grinding right now to get the most out of their lives. With minimum amounts of editing and maximum authenticity, we hope to provide lessons that anybody will find effective, relatable, and entertaining. We seek to have guests that provide learning that's based on their life experiences. Some are chosen because of their experience as high performers in sport, business, or education, and other guests have been chosen because they have meaningful lessons to teach, and I want to make sure they have the platform to share them with the world. The language in these videos is sometimes mature, as I'm always encouraging guests to just be themselves. This is all part of making sure that we do our best to give you content that is both authentic and effective, and that you truly feel like you can utilize the real learning and connect with these real people. On this episode, we have strength and conditioning coach Sean Connolly coming at us all the way from down under in Australia, but originating right here in the true north, strong and free. Now, letters aren't really my thing. I prefer to evaluate people on what they demonstrate as their body of work over time and not how long their email signature is. But he has some serious letters after his name in the strength and conditioning world, such as his Master's of Exercise Science, his Bachelor of Communications, his Australia Strength and Conditioning Association Level 2, his Poliquin International Certification Program Level 3, he's a Biosignature Practitioner Level 2, he's got his TRX Master Training Course Instructor Certification, he has his Advanced Muscle Testing Level 3, and more. But none of these capture why Sean is great, in my opinion. He took experience in sport, added some bitterness and heartbreak from injury, and mixed that with real empathy and hard work to become an excellent strength and conditioning coach. Now, I know a good amount of people in this field. There are people who can train but can't train people. There are others who can train people but don't know the science. Then there's the rare people like Sean who truly understand what they're doing and connect with the people they do it with. You're going to love this one. Hey, Coach, how are you?
I'm good, buddy. How you doing?
Good. I'm jealous of you, that's for sure, because we might get up to 15 here in the afternoon, but we're still at 0 or so in the morning.
Well, it was a very chilly 23, 24 out here today. So I will enjoy the sunshine out here for you on your behalf.
Yeah, there's obviously a large amount of my audience is still in my weather, so I think a lot of them are going to shut the episode off after that comment. This will be the least listened
awesome.
to episode.
Listening to the Canadian in the nice weather.
Yeah, exactly. And so, speaking of that, let's talk about your story. Let's talk about how you've managed to traverse the world, and even before that, what growing up was like, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, cool. So I was born in Fort McMurray. I grew up in Edmonton, and when I was 5, we moved over to Geelong in Australia, in Victoria, and I grew up in Geelong. Grew up playing basketball in my younger days. Played really high level basketball when I was younger. Played for the district. Played for the state. Went to a really good school, and I was playing AFL, the Aussie Rules Football, and I was a big, strong kid, and I kicked like 13 or 14 goals in like the second division, like the second grade team. And the coach from the first grade team was like, "You are in my team right now. You're on the bus. We're going and we're playing." And I was like, "This is fantastic." Like I did incredibly well. And then we went to Melbourne, played a school in Melbourne, and within 5 minutes, I had an opportunity to kick the ball, and I had 3 people tackle me simultaneously, and I did my ACL, MCL, PCL, meniscus, medial ligaments. Like the 3 major tears, the physios in physiotherapy world call it the unhappy triad, where all 3 of those ligaments were completely ruptured. And that's probably the end of my childhood chapter, and then the start of the chapter that's led me to here. Because that surgery, that injury was the catalyst for everything that's kind of happened in my life so far. So I sort of had to go through growing up as a 14, 15-year-old with a really bad knee, and I couldn't do anything because of it. Um, I had my surgery at the end of 2000. I had my reconstructive surgery in 2000, and in a 12-week period, I had put on 30 kilos, so 80 odd pounds or something. Put on a significant amount of weight. I was almost unrecognizable to the people that saw me before the injury, and that's where I grew up in high school as the fat kid, right? And it was pretty hard. So what happened was we then moved from Geelong in Victoria over here to Perth in Western Australia, which is just the most amazing place in the world. We're so isolated, right? Perth is closer to the moon than it is to Sydney. It's so far away. But, with this whole COVID thing, it's kind of working in our favor.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up in high school as the fat kid in a pretty tight-knit boarding school. And that I was bullied mercilessly. Like when I hear people talk about bullying or, I was bullied in high school, I'm like, please, like you guys have no idea of bullying when you wake up and all of your shoes have water balloons with urine in it. You put your shoes on and that bursts. Every time you come home from school, your mattress would be flipped. Your clothes would be in the showers all soaking wet. It was 3.5 years of daily sabotage from an awful lot of the other students there. And I just was I was either stupid, stubborn, or a bit of both. And that I didn't give up because I just didn't I just didn't know that there was an out clause. Like you could just say to people that enough was enough. Like you could tell the teachers that you were being bullied. Like you just put up with it. Right. And 3.5 years of just being bullied mercilessly. And I had having a Canadian accent, which is probably not too Canadian anymore. I had short hair, which was just not the thing in a boarding school here in Perth. And I was a bigger kid. Like I stuck out like a sore thumb. I was just easy target. And I was an idiot because I reacted. I'd bite. Every time they called me names, I'd like get back at them more. Anytime they'd say something, I'd fight. I'd throw a fist or something. I was not a smart kid in doing it. But, and then after high school, I went, you know what, enough's enough. And I focused on me and I dropped, in probably 12 months, I dropped about 40 odd kilos. So just over 100 pounds. And just changed my world. What I did, I started working out, started realizing that I enjoyed lifting. I was big into music at the time. My first career out of school was being a professional musician. And then I started lifting and changing my body and could see how my body could change. I was like, this weightlifting thing's kind of cool. Like I like this strength and conditioning thing. Yeah. And because I was a big sport kid growing up. And that was the start of the path moving towards strength and conditioning and exercise science. But I think it was, and I talk about this with my mom now and then. She doesn't really particularly like hearing about it, but I never told my folks, I never really told anybody how bad the bullying was or how merciless these kids were. Like they were just relentless. But I truly believe that amount of bullying and at the levels it was, like to give you some example, like we'd go to the dining hall for lunch or for dinner or for all of them, right? Pardon my potty mouth. We would go to the dining hall and I would go to, get my food and on the tray, like everybody else does in a cafeteria. And I'd sit down, and the second my butt hit the seat, it was choreographed that that whole table all grabbed their trays and moved to another table. So I was left there by myself. And there was so much noise when everybody left that it was just super obvious to see that I was the last guy there. and I would have people come and pick at my foods or throw food at me. And, we'd go to exams and people would make sure that there was 5 or 6 desks between them and me. The name calling, oh boy, the name calling, that was something that I don't wish on anybody. But it was because of that bullying and that merciless, relentless, never stopping, never easing up abuse. I'm so thankful for it now, right? And everyone's like, well, what? Like, you happy you were bullied? Yeah, because nothing phases me anymore. Like, I'm almost psychopathic in a way that I have the lowest level of empathy for so many things because it really isn't that high on my radar. So I've almost become like, it served me so well in business. Served me so well in the strength and conditioning industry because unless it's something I care about, then I just have no level of empathy towards it. Like, I just don't care. Mm-hmm. And some people go, well, that's pretty heartless. Like, it's pretty, it's pretty immature. It's pretty detached way of looking at it. I'm like, no, every day I have a level of emotional currency that I get to spend, and worrying about other BS or other people's issues or stuff that I can't affect or manipulate or adjust or and positively manipulate. Yep. I just don't care, because at the end of the day, I need to make sure I have enough emotional currency left to give to my kids and to my wife, because if I don't, then that's not fair. And it means that the day was a failure, right? Because I put too much effort into other stuff when my wife and my 2 daughters didn't get any of their dad when he came home. So I truly think that bullying has made me the person that I am, because I just don't care about things that don't need any care, like that don't matter, oh, Sean, it looks like one of the fence outside is just on a bit of a lane, like it might fall down. Okay, cool. Don't care. Like it does, if it doesn't affect me right now, and if I can't fix it right now and I can't adjust it, then I just don't care. I'll put it to my family, or working or finding a new client to work with, or helping an athlete get to a national competition, or I'll put my energy into stuff that can make a benefit, or can create a benefit, I should say. And I suppose this, this catchphrase of being a bit of a psychopath. And if people understand the definition of psychopathy, and being psychopathic, is they think it's always a psychopath as a serial killer. And okay, it helps having no empathy when you kill people, right? Because you don't want to have an emotion when you shoot someone. But it's just having no emotion. It's being so numb and detached. And I've actually found that now, over the years, after I kind of realized, holy cow, this is what it is, you can now turn the dial as to what things you care about and what things you don't care about, because it's a defense mechanism. It's how I protect myself. It's how I protect the people around me, and it's how I serve the people around me. Because if it's something that's important, then I'll do it. And if it's something that's important to me and my family and important to yourself, then I'll do it, because it's worth doing. But if things just don't add up, then I don't lose any sleep. I sleep perfectly at night. I have no stresses. I have no worries. Yeah. And I think that was kind of the first chapter. It was learning how I operate. And then I was just super stubborn and driven to be a strength and conditioning coach. And I just wanted to develop athletes. I wanted to be a part of the athlete journey, knowing that I'm a small cog in the machine of the athlete. I don't look for glory, or as you can see, the one glory that I have is quite selfish, in the way that I love to put jerseys up in my office or wherever I work of the athletes that I work with, because that jersey behind me, an athlete came to me with a torn Achilles. It was told that he was counted out, and anyway, we worked together for 2 years, and they won a state championship after that. And he gave me the jersey of the team that we started working together. He actually won a title with the team after this.
Right.
But it was this jersey that I remember. I remember the hours, the curse words, swearing, the blood, the tears, the whole 9 yards from that jersey. And I've got about 15 or 16 to still to frame. And it's those little memories that make me feel good about the journey of helping somebody else.
Okay. So like I said, when I say unscripted and like, oh, I don't know where we're gonna go with this. Now I know where we're gonna go with this. We already we got our pathway now, and maybe well over one episode's worth of questions, just off that. So I want to circle you back just for a second. And this sometimes
Sure.
for some people, this next question is the hardest question in the entire interview, depending. If you had to describe your mom in a word, what would that be?
If I was to describe my
Mom with one word.
um,
And you
bulletproof.
can bulletproof.
Bulletproof. But ironically
Dad?
enough, my father, he would be unbreakable. And ironically enough, my and I was just gonna tell you my mom is ironically bulletproof in the way that when it comes to me and my father, because I'm an only child, so my mom got it right the first time, right? So so when it comes to her cub, right,
Yeah.
and her husband, I don't think, like, I reckon she would go up against like Hulk Hogan's and whatnot. She'd be this David versus Goliath. She wouldn't care. Like, she'd be like, I'll give you, like, she'll wag the finger. I'll give you a piece of my mind. She wouldn't care. But ironically enough, my mom is an emotional soul. She is, like, we could talk about some of the cool things her granddaughters do, my kids, and she'd be a hot mess. She'd go to water. So when it comes to her family and protecting her family, of which she did an awful lot of when I was younger, is she's bulletproof, but she is emotionally sensitive to the point of becoming a hot mess. And my father is this immovable object. He's this stoic, hardened Irish, worked he's just retired a couple of years ago, but he's in his early 70s. He started work when he was 9. I don't think he's had more than 2 weeks off at a time. Like, he's just this really, really hardened character. Very funny, very witty, always has a story. And I've never, I think when he found out that he was having grandkids, when we had my first daughter, Isla, it's the only time I've seen him cry. Like, I've ever seen him weep because he was over the moon happy. Mm-hmm. He's just always been like a rock. And everyone goes, oh, like, this person's my rock. They just hold me down. Yeah, that's cool. No problems. But he's not. He's a rock that you can't move, this old bastard. You can't. He's very hard to change his views. And a lot of times he's got some very good views and very good opinions, but he's very hard. And I say that as the highest compliment I could give. Like, he just is immovable. And I like that. I like that he's strong in his resolve and in his character and in his resolve in his thoughts and his values. Like, his, over 70 years of creating values, like, they've become pretty solidified in how they think, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I describe my folks.
Cool. That's really good. Really.
I've never had to describe my mother and father in a word. That is very unique. I like that. That's a very cool thing.
Well, and it's honestly, it's becoming one of the key data points of this entire show. Like, being able to pull on that is really cool, but also now, as I've had enough episodes that I can go back and reflect upon it, there are common themes and then there's anomalies in those words, because you can, just like in any research, like you can group those words into categories,
Sure.
beyond just positive or negative.
Yeah.
And many of the people on the show have positive words for their parents, but when I look at the subgroups, what field the person's in, how they approach things, their levels of empathy, their communication style, their drive, whether they're a morning person or a night owl, like all
Very
that kind of
cool.
stuff. Like
Very
there's
cool.
some stuff that's connecting just to that one question alone. So that is like, I like that you're interested in it, and honestly, I'm super interested in it every time I ask, because I've also had some people be like, I won't answer that for mom, or I won't
Well, all right.
I'm just not going to talk about it. It's like, okay, that's cool. Like that's also interesting to me. Like
That's also a very interesting point. Yeah.
yeah. So I do want to like I want to stay on the bullying theme, not because I want to just drive home and dig deep into all your memories, but because I want to talk about how that shaped you as a coach, because we're both coaches of different crafts. And I know, like, I experienced some of that, not to the degree that you did, but I did have a similar response to you, which is like, tell no one. Don't ask for help on it, just figure it out. And I also have a similar reflection now, which is that I believe that has helped me immensely in terms of how I handle my day to day. I
Yeah.
connect with that point deeply, and so I'm interested to see what level of that, if any, do you bring to your coaching now on a daily basis?
Uh, yeah, that's a fantastic question. Um, I think I have this rule with my athletes, and it's very much I'm an advocate. Ironically enough, um, I've become a bit of an advocate for bullying, right? And I say that with the biggest asterisks I could put in there. Um, I was talking to someone about this the other day. I think I might have been talking to this with my mother the other day, and she was asking me like, "Do you ever regret going to that school and being bullied?" And I was like, "Nope, not at all. If anything, like I think bullies have their place. Like bullying is never a good thing, right? I never condone it. Like you should never bully people, but bullying in itself is a stressor, right? And you have to learn to overcome that stress, and how you deal with it is very important. Do you punch them, or do you outwit them? Do you have like what's your strategy? And everyone's like, oh, just say stop or turn and walk away. And like, you don't be stupid. Like turning and walking away, it does not stop a bully. Like they're fire craving oxygen. They need a reaction. They need something. And I suppose that's where I got really good at the art of shit talking. Like I just make fun of all of my athletes, and I encourage them to make fun of me. We had that conference call with a bunch of my athletes last night, and it's just like a roast. Everyone's making fun of each other because it shows that everybody can take themselves. They don't take themselves seriously, and and I find that people that can take the piss out of each other and take the mickey out of each other, like to me, that's a form of respect. I find that really appealing, and so we do that with a lot of the athletes. But I suppose, to answer your question directly, how bullying has affected my coaching is being bullied to the degree that I was. It's very easy to see and to read people, right? Because when you are, and I suppose I've become a very, very good people reader, and I enjoy people watching. I really got an enjoyment out of it when I was being bullied, because that's really all I could do. Like when you're sitting alone in the dining hall and the cafeteria, and when you're sitting alone in the boarding house, when everybody goes home for the weekend and you're home alone, you're at the boarding house by yourself. Like you get, like all you can do is watch what goes on. You get very good at watching other people's relationships, because you can't engage with them because they don't want to talk to you, because you're an idiot. Like you're the bully guy. You're getting bullied. No one wants to talk to you. So you get really good at seeing how people interact with each other. You get really good at almost developing, reading people that it would be beneficial for, say, a poker game, right? You can see their tells.
Yeah.
You can see when people are lying. You can see when people are telling the truth. You can see when people are uncomfortable. So I suppose this ability to read people both physically, verbally, and also getting a general idea of when you put all that together, if they're actually trying to swindle one over you. It's very easy to see if I need to be a very rah-rah, in your face, yell at you kind of coach, which works for some people, doesn't work for all. Or if I just need to take them aside and just cross my arms and just talk to them out the side of my mouth and just converse with them, right? So my answer is, being bullied at that level has impacted my coaching in the way that it's made me a very, very good communicator, because I can read the play very, very well. I get very, very good at reading the athletes. I read the coach. I read body language. Like, I look for all these signs, and based on that data, I will know very well how to communicate to that person, because I can say the same thing 7 different ways to 7 different athletes that have 7 different problems. So it's not what you say; it's how you say it. So I suppose it's made me a very, very good communicator with my athletes, knowing that when they're full of it, or if they're being a bit, if some guys are being soft, if there's an issue and some guys are a little bit delicate, or if everything's fine and some people need to be talked to sternly or yelled at or just given directions. It very much comes down to how you speak to your athletes will dictate what happens.
Yeah, cool. And I think I'm gonna make an argument against an earlier point that you made, which is that you said that you're not empathetic. And I'm going to say that you're actually, and maybe you like, you're hard and fast, because like you said, you can be maybe a little stubborn, but the difference, are you familiar with the difference between sympathy and empathy?
Yes, yes, I can totally see where you're going.
You're a horrible sympath, but actually a pretty good empath, because one of the key qualities of being empathetic is being able to be in it with that person without taking on where they're at. And I actually think that you're really good at that. And so now I've got 3 different notes that all point back to the same circled word or circled phrase, which is that wrong about his empathy. Because
it's a very good point, and you're not the first person to tell me either. I'm very impressed.
Down on that and say that sympath would have a large amount of their, like, if you had a bunch of players with really deep sob stories or really tough things that they had to overcome, maybe you hang their jersey on the wall behind you. But instead, it's the people it's like the people you've connected with the most, and maybe they've accomplished something, maybe they haven't, and that's who you're hanging on the wall. And when you talk about that situation, because I utilize those same tools in those moments of communication need as a coach, and it's like, it is that subtle nuance, and I'm always thinking, like, where are you at right now? Like, where's your head at in this game? Where's your head at in this drill? You just missed your 3rd shot in a row. So where are you? Like, are you in the depths of despair, or are you really unfocused and you need to be locked in? And I think that, and that doesn't mean with yelling, or it doesn't mean with anything that's like a cheap coaching technique, in my opinion. It means where, like, I just want to be there with you. And it sounds a lot to me like that's like you actually coach with empathy every day, and you actually utilize it every day. You just don't get down in there with them in that emotion, which is why you're able to then go on and be empathetic with the next person and be good at what you do with the next person. So I think you might have missed the mark on maybe just the definition of the word, I guess.
I'm very good at turning the amount of empathy I have for an athlete up to 11. There's ones that I connect really well with.
Yeah.
But there's also the athletes that, and I suppose this goes very much with a lot of other strength coaches, is the vast majority of us don't connect well with athletes that don't meet us at our expectations. So if you don't put in the work, like that's the one thing that drives a strength coach up the wall.
Yeah.
Right? They don't want to put in the work.
Or leaving the weights
out.
Pardon?
Or leaving the weights out. Yeah, leaving the weights out. Yeah, very well. Yeah, very good.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're leaving them out. They're very well done. Yeah, it's this this mutual arrangement between athlete and coach, is that it needs to be very much, you need to meet each other's expectations. And it's much harder to be empathetic to athletes in team settings than it is to do it when you're working with them one-on-one if they're in a solo sport. And this is where I really gravitated, and I'm coming back full circle now to working with a lot of semi-professional and professional sporting teams. Mm-hmm. But I took the left-hand turn to go into the private sector to work with athletes privately, because I didn't want, I had an offer to go, to come back to Canada and work at one of the universities. I've had offers to work out here as well, with sporting teams where they brought me in as an assistant strength and conditioning coach. And then it wouldn't have been very long before you get promoted to head strength coach, simply because your predecessor, never wanted that. Like, I wanted to get the job because I was that good, mm-hmm. because I earned it. I deserved it because I ticked all the boxes, not because I was just the next guy in line. And I made the really, really tough call to just go, no, I'm going into the private sector, and started in just a general commercial gym, which was interesting. I excelled very quickly. I made an awful lot of money. I made some amazing results. Like, the private sector was very, very good to me early on, very, exceptionally good. And then I slowly pushed more into exercise science and sports performance, because that's how I trained, general Joe public initially. But I quickly got out of sort of the everyday personal training, because I just got so sick and tired of trainers not really caring about educating themselves or upskilling themselves, or using books from the 1970s to teach their clients about nutrition, or they were just happy with being complacent, and they were happy with mediocrity. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And looking at jerseys, I know for a fact that there's no mediocrity in any of the jerseys, because all these athletes we've worked with we've achieved a medal, we've achieved a championship, we've achieved a national selection or something like this, which you can't get from being mediocre. Like, you have to go above and beyond. You've got to be willing to do the things that people aren't willing to do to win a title. And it's that whole, you do things in private that show in public. Mm-hmm. And I got out of the general personal training industry, and then started working with the private sector, semi-pro and pro athletes, and it just steamrolled from there. And it's been phenomenal. Look, it's been a lot of hard work, a lot of long hours, a lot of thankless nights, thankless training sessions. Like, you don't do it for the praise, but you do it because you want to be, and having a basketball upbringing, I'm a team sport guy. Like, I like being a part of an athlete's development, whether in a team setting or an individual setting. But, I'm there with their physio, I'm there with their skills coach, I'm there with their parents, so to be a team player with that player, like, they're the vehicle more than anything. Yeah. To be a part, to be in the back seat with that athlete and everybody else. It's a good feeling, and I enjoy celebrating success with other people than just to celebrate it myself.
Yeah, your empathetic qualities are definitely exponentially higher than you think they
I
are.
can turn it. It's that whole
Uh,
spinal tap. You can turn it to 11, or you can turn it right off.
yeah, no, and I feel that too. I think that the question that brings up for me, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into this, controllables, and we have a concept of the Boost Institute, and it's you're probably familiar with physical literacy here in Canada. It's a big thing that Canadians have created, and there's places all over the world that have modeled off of it and that kind of thing. And with that physical literacy comes the fundamental movement skills.
Yep.
So what I was kind of thinking way back when, a few years ago, when I first started doing some of this stuff, was where the physical literacy and fundamental movement skills were created out of a gap for how we perform at the highest level and how we perform in terms of overall health and wellness later in life. And I was like, well, we also have a pretty big gap in terms of learning. Like, we have a pretty big gap in terms of just getting complacent and not wanting to do more and that kind of thing. So that was when I went down a similar road and created the fundamental learning skills and learning literacy to be able to teach. It's not necessarily a novel idea in and of itself, but it's a concept to be able to teach things through like growth mindset and different feedback and communication tools and mental strategies and breathing and all kinds of other good stuff. And so those fundamental skills for learning, trademark the Boost Institute, are separated into 3 categories, and and the categories are like feedback, communication, blah blah, and they're all feedback controllables, communication controllables, all things that you can wrest control of regardless of the situation. And you talked a lot about being able to focus only on things that you can wrest control of in each moment. The fence is leaning. That's not in my wheelhouse right now. Like, I'm moving in a different direction on things I can control. And it's interesting to me when you talk about not having what you referred to as not having empathy. Is there or was there ever a dark side to that for you? Like, after bullying, so after being in school and that kind of thing, was there ever maybe whether it manifested kind of as like yelling and screaming as a coach and having to learn that's not effective, or something else that maybe that not being maybe deeply connected to things that you can't control, has that ever been a negative in any way? And if the answer is no, then it might just be no.
I think early on, when I got out of school and went to university and realized that I made friends really easily. I had made some great friends. I'd lost, nearly 100 pounds. So girls started to like me for the first time. Like, that was a first. Was to be seen by the opposite sex of other than, just the short round, the fat round guy. I got really cocky. Like, I got really arrogant in my own appearance and self-worth, and I was a bad guy. Like, I was a bad guy for a little while. Like, I wasn't very nice to women. I would, in the way that I was a bit of a rock star. Like, I'd have a girl every weekend. I'd be out every week. If I was in it for the moment, and I was in it for me for the moment. And looking back on it now, like, I'm not super proud of it, but can you blame a guy who had come from his whole upbringing being bullied and isolated to then becoming somewhat attractive and looking like a physical specimen? And you can't help but sort of take a bite of the forbidden fruit. And I think doing those kind of things made me realize, the real difference between being a good guy and a bad guy. And I think the learning the error of my ways has come from, my wife, and that she's the one that definitely challenges me to go, hey, shut your mouth. This is what you sound like. This is what you look like. This is how it's coming across. Did you ever think of that? So she's very brutal and very stern in her feedback, which then made me go, well, I value her. I value her opinion and adore her to death. So maybe she might be onto something, which has then made me sort of start to ask myself these questions as to going, what's important, what needs to be done, what is valuable. And it very much comes down to the people that are in my world are the people that get my love, affection, my time, my resources. So it's very much family based. Ironically enough, coming from a guy who doesn't have a very big family.
Yeah.
So, the basketball teams, the men's teams, the women's teams, the pro athletes, they all are very much family because they treat me like family. They look after me, and they like me. They choose to stay with me. And that's very important. So it very much the one thing that I value the most above all is family. So just like my mother and protecting her cubs, I'm very much the same with my kids, and I'm the same with my athletes. Like and I remember one time there was a little bit of fisticuffs on the court once between my athlete and the opposition, and I'm kind of squeezing the iPad, getting ready to get onto the court and solve some problems. And my assistant kind of taps me on the thigh. He's like, "Take a breath, coach, take a breath." And, so it's, I think very much the thing that I care about the most is family. And in that is the people that are in my world. But I'm very choosy with the people that are in my world. And I'm lucky that I have that luxury being working in the semi-pro and professional setting. I don't get that luxury, but working in the private sector, I'm very picky and choosy, and I have the privilege of picking who's in my world. And that's, to me, that is very, very, very important.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me to look at it from that perspective of, like, I think people, and I'm speaking from experience, who are really good at not worrying about what they can't control. Because I think I'm probably closer to your level than not, where, like, the people who are around me the most, like my girlfriend, I can be annoyingly calm in situations where something's out of my control. Like I'm 100% confident that there's been moments where it's just like something might be going on, and part of her frustration in that moment is like, and look at this guy over here just chilling, like like shit's hitting the fan, and he's just lounging over here, not worried about it because he can't control it, and that would be the voice that she so now cool. the people who are close to me know that it's super like it's genuine. Like, I'm not pushing it down. I'm legitimately just like, oh, I can't, like, it's not really something.
I'm just not going to waste any energy on it. Yeah. Like, it's just not, it doesn't pay me a dividend, right? Totally. Like,
low ROI.
Yeah, exactly, right? And I pretty much gauge everything like that. Like, if I do the dishes, I know I'm going to have clean dishes. That's a 1-to-1. Like that works for me, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not a terribly good cook, so don't expect a Michelin meal from me, because I don't have any creativity and I don't know, how to cook. I'd rather Uber Eats, or I'd rather get the ingredients delivered with a cookbook, and I can make the cool meal, but I don't have the skill set of preparing this amazing meal.
Yeah.
But you ask me to develop some athlete, like, okay, cool, I'll over deliver that.
Yeah.
but I just won't cook,
Yeah.
well, I won't cook. Like, don't expect me to rock your socks off,
Yeah.
you know?
And so I guess the question is, because again, and speaking from experience, like, does that get misinterpreted by people who aren't inside that circle as arrogance to this day?
100% it does. Yep.
Yeah.
All the time. All the time. I've had uh, I've had feedback from my athletes and parents and coaches, second and third hand from information that they're getting,
Hmm.
with people going, "Oh yeah, Sean's super cocky and super arrogant." I'm like, no, like there's a huge difference between being confident and arrogant, and a lot of people don't see the line, and it's a big thick black line for me. I'm super confident in my skill set, and I love talking about it. I love teaching people about the stuff that I'm really good at, because I want people to get better at it. And I find, obviously, I've spent the last 13 years of my career, of my life, building this career to be good at this skill set. So it must mean something to me. And I love teaching people about it, and I love helping people about it. But I'm also self-aware enough to know the things that I'm not good at.
Yeah.
And I'm also self-aware enough to know the things that I'm not good at that I should get better at, and the stuff I just don't have any interest in getting better at either. You
Yeah.
know,
That's
so friends of mine are like, "Hey, Sean, you should come play poker with us." I'm like, "No, I can play poker, but I don't know it that well, and I really don't want to have any money taken off of me tonight. So you guys can play by yourselves."
yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And I think that's even that's interesting to me, just in the context of like, I'm working with, or I was working with, for a group of like 13-year-old boys for the first time. And like, as you know, I coach women's basketball, but I was working with boys in the club season this spring. And one of the moms of one of the boys, who was new to the club this year, asked me, I think that so and so, her son, is really cocky. Like, I really want him to get a little bit more humble. And she's like, he's especially really cocky about his basketball. Like, he thinks he's really good. And I looked her in the eye. I was like, well, he's really good for his age. Like, he is good. like the last thing I want to do is tell a 13-year-old boy, when there's X number of things to be self-conscious and scared about in his world, to not be confident about something he's actually good at. And so I told her that, and she's like, well, like, what's the difference between being cocky and confident? And I'd be interested to see your take on this, as somebody who's probably been confronted with this for yourself and with people you've worked with. I answered and said, cocky is when you start to go on that line of not seeing your blind spots, or
Yep.
being willing to accept them when somebody delivers them to you.
Correct. 100% right.
Whereas
Yep.
whereas confident is you're seeing success, and you have a pretty good awareness that you're pretty good at this thing, and there's data to back it up. Whether that data is anecdotal in terms of coaches saying, like, you're the best player on this team, so you should need to act like it, or whether that data is, I'm the leading scorer in the league 3 years in a row. Confidence is when there's data to back up your belief in yourself. Cockiness, to me, is when there's no data to speak of, and when somebody points out the fact there's no data, you won't hear it, and you just believe in.
That's the best explanation I've heard. I couldn't agree more with that. You said it better than what I could have said it. That's phenomenal. There's probably two things I want to take from that with you. Is I think I really, really liked strength and conditioning, because there's this big divide between what's subjective and what's objective. And when dealing with athletes, it's very, very easy for me to humble an athlete in the gym, because weights don't lie. Like a 200-pound bar is a 200-pound bar. It doesn't matter what color it is, it's 200 pounds. So you can't, if you're like, yeah, I could bench press, 150 kilos back in the day. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, let's see where you are compared to what you were back in the day. Like, let's find some objective numbers and find out if you're talking BS or if you're talking the talk. So I like that the weights room is the ultimate lie detector, and B, it humbles athletes to essentially get them all at both their own personal level and at the same level as everybody else. Because you can't lie. You cannot fudge your way out of a weights room, because whatever you can lift is whatever you could lift. And so I've always been I've been hugely driven to use, the weights room and the tools that I have at my disposal to be these lie detectors, and to and I use it as buy-in with an athlete as well, to show them exactly where they are. When they have this inflated ego or this inflated self-importance, like, yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good on the court. Yeah, like, you can have a good day and a bad day on the court. Equally, you can have good and bad days in the weights room, but the weights room doesn't change. The weight's still the same. Like 10 chin-ups is still 10 chin-ups. Whereas, there's so many variables on a basketball court that it's very, very hard to get some kind of consistent objective data to present to your athletes, which goes to, I suppose, my biggest pet peeve in semi-pro and professional sports is the subjectivity of comments that coaches give their athletes. And I tell you right now, this is going to rattle some coaches, some skills coaches and head coaches of sporting teams. Like, a lot of them, it's going to piss them off, right? Yeah. But I'm so lucky that the coaches that I work with in basketball out here in Perth, as well as the other ones in Canada and Europe, they are very, very good at giving good, clear, objective data to the athlete of how well they're traveling. My biggest peeve is when an athlete is trying to keep their position in the team, or they've been cut and they're trying to get back in, or whatever the case may be. And the coach is like, yeah, we just need to get you faster, or you're not quite, we've got to make you a little bit better in transition. What the hell does that mean? Like, we need to get you a little bit faster. Okay, well, I do all the testing for speed and quickness. Where's the speed level that they need to be at? Where are they at? And how much time you're going to give them to be able to get to this imaginary level that you've somehow dictated as the bare minimum. Mm-hmm. So I just lose my mind when coaches are like, we just got to work on his defense. How? Like, that's such a broad stroke that you can't obviously articulate that anymore. And unfortunately, and it's a systemic problem that I'll never be able to change in my lifetime, but coaches have this, this power, this dictatorship where they can say what goes. And unfortunately, that's the only way it works, right? Like, they make the decisions for the team. So, but the gripe that I have is I wish coaches would be better in their delivering of information of athletes. We need to get them faster in transition, or they're just not, we've got to get them better in defense, or they're not performing like they should. Well, give me the data. Like, tell me what it is. Don't just give these flippant comments of what you're justifying as adequate feedback, because it doesn't serve the athlete, and it's murky at best. It's ambiguous, and it doesn't serve anybody. And that's why I really, really like the weights room, and that's where I do my best work, is because it's objective. If you can bench press, 150, 200 kilos, cool. Like, you can't argue. Like, you did it. You saw it. It was filmed. It was written down. And when the coaches that I work with, when they go, how's he doing? Like, we have spreadsheets, we have data, my job is to then make the coach's job that much easier to make better decisions, because I've gone, here's where he's at, or here's where she's at. This is how they're feeling. This is where their body's at. This is how many minutes they've done over this week. This is what you can do. This is what I would recommend not doing. And at the end of the day, I trust my coaches and whatever the decisions they make. But if I didn't have that kind of information to present to them, I think I'd be in I'd be very, how do I put it? My temper would be pushed. My buttons would be pushed for sure.
Yeah, and that brings up. So I'm a CrossFit guy. I'm not good at it, but I enjoy it.
Good.
And whether, regardless of any opinions on it, and they're just like anything, there's good things about it and there's bad things about it. And the one point I make very clear every time we talk about anything like this, because I had his name's Tony Blauer on the show, and he's a big self-defense guy, and he works with and for CrossFit on their self-defense course, and he's very involved in with Rogue and all that kind of stuff. But every time we talk about it, CrossFit is not strength and conditioning. Strength and conditioning is not CrossFit. That is one thing that I'm a deep believer in, is that you, and it's not to say that one is better or worse. It's just that they are different things.
It is what it is.
Yeah, and the thing that I love about both, though, and I've connected to CrossFit just because I like being told what to do, because I coach for a living. So it's like I tell others what to do all the time.
The last thing you want to do is think about it. Yeah, I
love going into a space, and then I like that my workout doesn't take me very long, but I get my butt kicked. I like that, and I was fortunate enough to have an awesome person. Really, he wasn't who got me into it, but he was who trained me in it the most. Jason McDonald, who used to fight UFC, and he works for CrossFit as well. And so because of that, I learned movements properly. Movement mechanics was an emphasis day in and day out. There was no bad moving. I didn't get hurt, that kind of thing. Yeah. It was great. Let's just say, and there's the opposite experience in CrossFit all the time, but this was just like one of the really positive ones. The thing I really loved about it, besides those things, is that it is a constant in terms of humbling you. Like that day where it's just like, I get my ring muscle up and I'm walking out of the gym being like, I am the strongest, fittest person on the planet. And I'm in no way disparaging moms, but somebody who goes to the gym, who is a mom of multiple kids, comes in and does like 45 muscle ups as a warm up. And it's just like, oh, right. Like, this is, because in that moment, it was definitely like, you're like, okay, like I'm feeling pretty good about myself. And within 5 minutes, it's like, oh, yeah, right. Yeah. And so when you talk about that immovable data that any kind of strength conditioning training, if for a moment I lump all those things into one group, provides, there just is no argument. It's like, you're not as good as that. Like you just said that you were the fittest person in the gym today. Well, that 40-something-year-old woman just did 15 times what you just did.
Yeah, so, Karen over there smoked you. Yeah.
My mom's name is Karen, by the way, and I get Karen jokes all the time, and I'm like, that's not my mom at all.
The name Karen has definitely in the zeitgeist of the time has just definitely been. It's so good.
My mom does work in HR.
Oh God.
Yeah, she is Karen from HR. So
that's so funny. That's the best thing ever.
But yeah, so it's like, to me, like, CrossFit has been that thing that it's like, and coaching also inherently does it, right? Like, regardless of what you coach or what aspect of a sport you coach, you get humbled all the time, because you start to be like, hey, I kind of think I know what I'm doing. And then if you're worth half your weight as a coach, you go and try and go to a clinic or try and learn or talk to someone like this or whatever and get something new. And you're like, oh man, I just took away 5 different things from that person. Like, yet again, I'm proven that I didn't know it nearly as well as I thought I did. And
I, do you know, it's funny. I owe CrossFit a massive apology, right? There's still, don't get me wrong, I have an endless list of things that I think CrossFit is awful at and that don't do well. But I suppose the CrossFit bastardizing strength and conditioning and Olympic weightlifting and gymnastics and calisthenics, like that bastardization of it is, for a purist strength coach like me, is offensive. But on the side note, like, couldn't have been any more of a better branding marketing move to create this new thing, right? But I remember back a long time ago, I was training my athletes out of a CrossFit gym that was run pretty poorly and by not very good CrossFit practitioners,
Right.
but CrossFit nonetheless, right? It was exactly the same, looked the same, smelled the same, the whiteboard with daily workouts on it and whatnot. But being in there with a guy who's one of my best friends who was in the military, he finished near ducks of the school that I was at. He did one or two tours of Afghanistan. He was a firefighter. Like he's done all of these things, and then he loves CrossFit. Like, and he was exceptional at it. And it really taught me that I needed to stop being this one-trick pony in strength and conditioning, and realizing that there was a lot of other things on offer that may get an athlete from A to B. Like it's like the person who just constantly eats steak and potatoes all day, every day for their whole life, and doesn't realize that there's awesome Thai food or Chinese food or Indian food or Mexican. Like there's all these different types of meals. Funnily enough, for a guy who can't cook, does like to eat the stuff. But there's so many different things out there. Sure, CrossFit does a lot of them, but I think it's the lessons that there's so many things that CrossFit does, and they have an awful lot of feathers in their cap. And coaches that are educated in all of those things, that have all those feathers in their cap, that are educated and know all of these and appreciate them and put the right tool in the right situation, like that's how I learned to become a really resilient and practical strength coach, was knowing to use the right tool for the right job.
Yeah.
And I was initially educated by Charles Poliquin before he passed away. And he's very much like just straight down the line. This is the way you train athletes, and there's no wriggle room. This is how you do it. And he's in one lane, and he's very good. He was very, very, very good. He's exceptional at his type of strength training. But there's also guys like that do amazing stuff in the movement area, that guys that do phenomenal in the recovery area and Olympic weightlifting and so on and so forth. So it's knowing the right tool for the right job. And Ken, the only way you know that is just by doing the time. Like experience is the only way you can get better. And that's, funnily enough, experience is far more of a humbling agent than a barbell will ever be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really concise way to put it too. And on the CrossFit front, like I
on a side note, CrossFit's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Like when sometimes you see some of these cross-tards down at these gyms, like they're so, like, you cannot say that CrossFitters are not fit. Like they can do just amazing things. Like, you've seen those Netflix documentaries with like the top 20 men and women.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone says. They're physical specimens.
Yeah. And
they can do things that are ungodly. And if you said, hey, humans could do X, Y, and Z, and that was part of their workout, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. And they do it. Like, I tip my hat to some of the stuff that CrossFitters do. But I truly believe that the quality of the coach dictates the quality of CrossFit you receive.
100%. And a CrossFit purist would say, is that not true in everything?
100%. Yep. So, no arguments.
And I've been in those gyms, as like when I'm traveling for work or something like that, where I drop in somewhere in CrossFit spaces, and I'm like, this is like the one of the worst experience I ever had was actually when I was moving. And before I moved, I was visiting Calgary, and I was every day I'd go to a different one. I was like, what's going to be my place? So I went to a class. I was the only one in the class. I told the guy that I had coached CrossFit previously at the gym I was coming from. And he said, oh, cool, and left. And I don't mean he left the gym. like the workout space. I mean, he got on a bike and rode away. Gym's unlocked. I'm alone. He's like, so you good with the workout then? I was like, yeah, I guess. So I was there for like 45 minutes, 50 minutes alone, working out. He didn't know, like, I just told him, I know what I'm doing. He's like, oh, hey, wicked. See ya.
That's phenomenal.
So obviously some safety problems and stuff like that there. But
oh yeah, there's a few red flags.
Yeah.
There's a few red flags there. Yeah.
But the thing that I love about it, that I honestly don't think any other, I'll use the word sport or activity has given me, is the people. And that is really where that's just like, and like I said, I had a great experience at Jason's gym. The highest concentration of awesome people in an awesome environment with good science and all that kind of stuff, and a very, like you said before, great family-like atmosphere and that kind of thing. And the saddest part is, I don't think I'll ever find it again, even in that world, like in the CrossFit world. Like, it was just that good. Like, I got totally spoiled. And so now it's like, now I go to anywhere else and it's just kind of like, this isn't.
It's a high bar.
Yeah, it's not that. And so now, like, I think I'm just biting the bullet. I'm just going to make my own garage gym, because it's like, nobody can satisfy this need. I'm just going to work out. I'm going to take my ball and I'm going to go.
Do it might take my ball and go home.
Yeah.
That's so funny. That's so good.
Oh,
I love that.
The last point that I kind of wanted to talk about with you, because you mentioned it really early on, was you used the word serve. You said it's how this is how I serve, or how can I serve, and in my opinion, partly because this is also how I am, service is the most important part of coaching, period. If you don't have a service oriented attitude, you're not gonna achieve anything of significance. I'll be that aggressive with it. So you can be good, but if service is not at the center of what you're doing, it's not going to matter. Where do you think that comes from for you? Where do you think that idea of serving athletes came from?
Oh boy, I'm going to get ridiculed for this one. You're going to make fun of me. It came from back home in Canada, right? It came from like the Roadhouse Diner. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, if the stereotype everybody has with Canadians, that we're always so nice and we're always so polite. It's because we're brought up that way. And I had a mom who had no problem smacking me upside the head if I didn't use please, thank you, or sir, or ma'am, right? And I had an Irish Catholic father, so he was like, I'd go from a whooping to an ass kicking, right? So I had two levels. So like, my mom would beat me, like, she'd never beat me, but she'd like give me a smack upside the head, and then she'd tell my dad, and then when he got home, oh boy, did I just get a whooping. But there's only so many times you get a whooping before you realize, there's a certain level, there's a certain standard you have to uphold. But it all came back home when the service-based industry, particularly hospitality back in Canada, in my opinion, is second to none around the world. You go to restaurants and whatnot in America, and it's artificial. It's plastic, because they do it because they want their tips. Rightfully so, no problem. Yeah. People in Australia, that's factored into their pay. Yeah. So they don't get tips, right? So like, there's no incentive. But back home in Canada, particularly in Ponoka, where my family's from, the Roadhouse Diners I was brought up to call everybody sir or everybody ma'am. I was forced, and I do it now enjoyably, shaking people's hands and looking them in the eye and saying please and thank you. And if you say you're going to do something, like, you go do it. And it came from this little small town of being courteous and kind. And your word is, if you say you're going to do something, don't come back until you do it. Like that is your word's your bond. And so when I work with athletes nowadays, I enjoy delivering programs and training and coaching that makes them better, but I do it in a way that the service they get is second to none, because they get more I've always tried to make it that you get more than just coaching and programming. Like I want to put my 13 years in the industry, my master's degree, hopefully next year might start my PhD, in a box, so that my athletes can use and plug and play that, so that they can get results faster than everybody else. So you're not just paying a coach to train you. You're paying for 13 years of the most effective problem solving to get you from A to B, rather than having to do it on your own and making all of the mistakes and all that kind of jazz. So my need to serve athletes and to serve people, to work with them, comes from just my basic enjoyment in human interaction. But I also incorporated my lessons back in Canada at a roadhouse in Ponoka, where you had bottomless coffee, which is unheard of in Perth. Yeah. You pay like $6 for a cup of coffee out here. It's outrageous. The level of service paired with your desire and enjoyment in serving is very much a two-pronged approach in being able to do something very, very well.
Yeah, and that's a really clear way, I think, to articulate that too. In that, when you approach things from service, you suddenly are looking to explain why more. You're teaching more. There's a lot more. I love the Greg Popovich hug 'em and hold 'em concept. Like, I think that's just like, from a guy that's pretty blunt, to say the least, and pretty straight up with everybody he deals with. He was the first person to kind of capture for me the ability to give compassion and empathy and that kind of stuff while having that attitude. And I think,
Ken, Pop's a really, really good example in so many different ways, in the way that, look, and I'm a Celtics fan. I bleed Celtics. So anybody talks bad about them, it's the only time I'll punch someone in the face. I bleed Celtics. But growing up, I was a big San Antonio fan, big David Robinson fan when I was growing up. Him and Shaq were my two dudes, right? And I remember Greg Popovich. And the more I've looked into it, I look back, look at how I was when I was a kid through an adult's eyes. And I think Pop, as well as Phil Jackson, more so Popovich, is a brilliant embodiment of what value is, in the way that if he gives you a compliment, like, that's gold. If he shakes your hand and says, "Well done," that is, you could take that to the bank and cash it for something. Yeah. Like Popovich told me I did a good job. And so this notion, this concept of value, like marketers and internet marketers and business coaches talk about value all the time. Yeah, cool. In that context, it worked well. But I think it comes down to what you say in terms of your words, your coaching, your programming, your demeanor. Like, it has to have value. So if you say "well done" to an athlete, that's going to mean something. And it's Pop. You've seen when they ask those two questions at quarter time and 3/4 time, and they ask Pop two questions. If it's a sucky question, like, he's going to tell you. Yeah. He's going to ridicule you on live TV. Yeah. But if it's good and it's relevant, then he's going to give you a quality answer, which is going to set you up for some really good sound bites. So yeah. I think that the notion of, if you're a coach, having the skill set, having experience is very, very important, but you have to hold some value. You have to have some worth.
Yeah.
And that purely comes with just doing it for a long time, practicing, being vulnerable, and having people tell you that you're good or that you suck. But value is super important, and that's why, like, anytime Pop says bad about somebody, it's because they're a dick.
Yeah.
Or if he says something really good about someone, then it's you really go, okay, cool, they've had an impact on him. That must be pretty important.
Yeah, totally. And I think to kind of put a bow on that too, we just had one of the men's basketball coaches at Wake Forest where Tim Duncan played. I just recorded it with him last week, and when you talk about value, it's that tree too, right? Like what have you bred with others and
100%. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, and the example that I'll use forever now, and I've told him I wouldn't, so I won't. But the comparison that this coach made was when Tim Duncan comes on a campus, nobody even knows. Like, he doesn't tell anybody. He just kind of like, he'll just wander into the gym alone, like just be like super chill. Another ex-athlete from that school who's also had quite a bit of success, who I'm not going to name, comes on with film crews and tells people and is like, hey, I'm going to be here at this time and I'm going to be here. Like,
yeah.
And coincidentally, one of those athletes has played for Popovich in the NBA and one hasn't. And I think that tree, that breeding of that same attitude also adds that value, because it's like, not only did I think you're this, but I know this guy's this, and he's been with you for the last 15 years. So
that's right.
It gets really, it kind of just, I guess it tightens everything up. It makes it like, it reinforces and solidifies, like, yeah, you're a good dude.
Yeah, I agree. Completely agree.
Yeah. So I guess just to wrap up with a couple things that I cover with everybody here, if people want to follow this, and like this show, when I started the show, I was expecting it like 10 people to watch, and I was like, if 10 people watch or listen to the podcast version, cool. And then at the end of the 2-week mark, it was like, you get like the analytics report back from all the different platforms, and it's like over 2,500 hours of consumption. I was like,
wow, good for you.
In 2 weeks. And so now we're just like, this week that we're finishing now is just our 3rd week, and we're approaching double that. And so at the beginning of this, I said, I would say to the guests, like, I don't know how many people are going to see this and actually follow you, but what are your social media handles? Like, where can people find you? Now it's like, where can people find you? Because somebody might actually go. Like, maybe, I'm not saying 100 people are going to go, but I'm saying, like, you might get a person who listens and is like, I'm going to check his shit out.
That's really cool. Well, good for you, buddy. That's really good. I love success stories. That's one of my little pieces of passion I get. This is so really cool that people are starting to buy into it. That's really good.
Well, and look, I'm not looking for the props. I'm more just saying, like, hey, there's actual value now.
That's really good. Look, if people want to find me, it's anything Coach Connolly on Facebook and Instagram. Those are the 2 places that they'll find me or find stuff that I'm doing there. So that'll be, those are the easiest places. And coachconnolly.com.au.
.com.au.
That's the one.
Yeah. And then the question I ask everybody is, in a phrase or two, what's your best advice on learning and getting better?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. When it comes to learning, when it comes to getting better, I always challenge people, and I try to constantly challenge myself to put myself in a position of discomfort and question whether, how can I get better? How can I do better? What can I add? What other feathers can I add to my cap? And it's always trying to put a positive spin on it and ask yourself. It very much, it's a T-shirt that my daughter has, which is, what if I fall? Oh, but darling, what if you fly? What if you actually do something and it turns out to be absolutely amazing? And you'll never know unless you actually try it. And that goes from finding a topic that you want to explore. What if it sucks? Well, cool. You'll never know if it sucks unless you do it, and you would have learned a bunch of lessons realizing that it sucks, and you can move on to something else. Or you can find something that just turned out to be an absolute jackpot for you. But it was very much a quote that's on a T-shirt that my daughter has, and it literally is in what I think about all the time.
That's cool. That's also like, I'm imagining people, like you just walking down the street with your daughter and people are looking at her and bursting into tears being like, oh my God, I just got the most profound thing I've gotten in weeks from that little girl's shirt. that might be the deepest thing somebody hears in their entire year, and they're just like walking along eating their ice cream, and then it's just like, holy crap, that girl's shirt really got me.
That's so good.
That's
so
cool.
good.
Well,
yeah,
hey,
look, it's very, very Peter Panish.
yeah, no, it's nice, and I think that, yeah, it's there's a lot of value in that sentiment these days, that's for sure. So thank you so much. I appreciate you staying up. I have a feeling you're a morning guy, so I feel like this might be staying up late for you, but
No, I am all yours, Ken. I've had an absolute ball. Look, it's me that should be thanking you. I've had an absolute treat doing this. This has been great fun.
cool. Yeah, and I learned an accent which is Canadian mixed with Australian, which I never really heard before. I was expecting you to be a little thicker on the Aussie side, but it's like this fun mix. And the great thing is that
it's not an attractive accent. I'll tell you that. It's a Baskin Robbins 31 flavors accent. There's a lot of things you'd take it or leave it. But
in
I've had a
2020,
ball.
in 2020, to be unique and attractive, you just have to be different, right? You just
Well played.
yeah,
Well played.
so.
You tied that one up real nice.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it a ton, and we'll definitely have to talk again soon.
No, you're very welcome. Thanks, Ken. It's been my pleasure.
make sure you subscribe wherever you get podcasts or to this YouTube channel to hear our weekly episodes.